Good afternoon. I'm Border Patrol Agent Ron Bellavia, and I'd like to welcome you to the Atomic Center for today's town hall with Secretary Napolitano. As part of the Border Patrol team, I'm privileged to contribute to the tradition of esprit de corps that is built around attributes of camaraderie, shared enthusiasm, and devotion to mission, attributes that are central to the concept of one DHS. Maintaining border security and facilitating legitimate trade and travel are only attainable because of the esprit de corps and the unity of effort that enables among the Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protection family, and our many state, federal, and local partners. Whether it's disrupting drug trafficking organization, integrating a national response to H1N1, combating human smuggling organizations, or tracking and targeting terrorists that seek to do our citizens harm, we are all in a better position to succeed when we work together as DHS employees. Today, Secretary Napolitano will outline her vision for one DHS and the need to build an integrated and mature department that works together. She will also highlight the department's achievements over the past year as we have worked across the department to meet our shared responsibilities. I believe that building on that culture of shared responsibility will increase the security that DHS provides to our citizens and to our nation. After her remarks, the Secretary will take questions from the audience and from those who have submitted your questions via email. We are honored to have her with us today. Please join me in welcoming our Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, Secretary Janet Napolitano.
All right. Well, thank you, Ron, and thanks all of you for joining us today. It's great to talk with so many of you. I think we could almost say it's a virtual get-together because we have employees from across the country and indeed internationally listening as well. I'm coming to you today from USCIS, where we have a number of DHS employees from across the department. We're also joined on the video conference by gatherings of employees across the country, and indeed we will be sharing this with all DHS employees very, very soon. So thanks to all of you for being a part of this, and most of all, thank you for the work that you do every day to keep our nation safe and to keep our nation secure. Before we enter the holidays and make plans for the new year, I'd like to talk a little bit about the remarkable year that has just passed. Now, I am honored to serve in a department of roughly 230,000 men and women with a clear mission and a strong desire to make DHS ever stronger every day. For that reason, we have built upon the spirit of collaboration in everything that we do. Within the department, with our state, local, tribal, private sector, and international partners. And I think with your dedication and creativity, we can make DHS not just more effective at our mission, but also one of the very best places to work in government. Now, over the past year, I have been speaking publicly about the department's 5 major responsibilities. To audiences across the country and abroad, I've detailed our approach to our #1 priority, which is to prevent terrorist attacks on United States soil. I've spoken about the aggressive measures we've taken to secure our nation's borders. I've discussed the urgent need to reform our nation's immigration laws. I've addressed the responsibility we all share to make our country more ready and resilient in the face of a terrorist threat or a natural disaster. But today I want to talk about the 5th priority and the steps that we are taking to create one DHS. Now, shaping this department is, as you might imagine, quite a large task. Tom Ridge, our first secretary, said that the creation of DHS on March the 1st, 2003, was like launching the world's biggest public offering at a time when the wounds from September 11 were still fresh. This work of creating the department began with my predecessors, for which I think they deserve our recognition and our gratitude. And no doubt the work of creating this department will continue even beyond my time here. We've made progress, but much more lies ahead. I see one DHS as a strong, efficient, and focused department, one where all the talents and skills that we possess as individuals and as components come together in new and exciting ways to serve our missions. So, for example, let's talk about some of the progress that we have made. Shortly after I started last winter, we saw serious flooding and ice storms in the Midwest. In short order, CBP was providing overflights so we could get better maps. Coast Guard was taking on rescue missions, and FEMA was coordinating assistance to thousands of displaced residents. We saw a similar all-hands approach when a tsunami struck American Samoa this past September. Now, stories about this kind of cooperation and creativity often don't make the headlines, but they don't go unnoticed either. The diverse capacities of our components, far from being a weakness, are in fact one of our biggest strengths. So those are just two examples of how DHS can be much more than the sum of our component parts, of how we can redefine the ideas of collaboration across agencies and departments to help keep the country safe. Now, in one sense, we will always be a department made up of agencies with their own unique histories. But what connects us all, what makes us look beyond the letters TSA, USCIS, or I&A, or S&T, is our common mission and the responsibilities that go with it. In fact, sometimes I don't even see DHS as an organization of components. I see it as an organization of missions and responsibilities. So that is the genesis of my vision for one DHS. So the question is, what are we doing to get us there, right? How are we going to get there? One way is through efficiency review, or ER. Over the past year, we have launched a number of efforts to build one DHS, efforts that involve literally tens of thousands of you in ways big and small. In efficiency review, we have looked at how we make our operations more streamlined and focused, and make sure it's not just about saving money, but avoiding unnecessary costs. ER is about being effective and efficient with the dollars that we have. Central to this is being good stewards of the public trust. It was critical then that we leverage our collective buying power, reduce waste, identify economies of scale. Our steps this year alone are leading to millions of dollars of savings and cost avoidance. But ER is about much more than dollars and cents. We're bringing employees together to build teams and to solve problems. We're uncovering new ways to share information and to collaborate. The consolidated headquarters at the St. Elizabeth's campus in Southwest DC will help unify our many components into one cohesive department. And that unification is itself expected to save taxpayers literally hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 30 years. The new DH-wide intranet we're launching over the coming year will greatly improve our ability to share and collaborate across the entire department. And the new programs and tools we're implementing now and in the future will encourage greater employee input, share ideas across components, strengthen the health and welfare of our workforce, and increase the ranks of veterans and of minority employees across DHS. So that being said, let me give you a few examples of our shared progress. And as we look forward to an even busier 2010, I think we should take a moment and have some pride in the accomplishments we've achieved over the past year. For example, in our mission to guard against terrorism, this remains a primary mission for the Department of Homeland Security. DHS was forged in the aftermath of 9/11 to secure the country by working with our partners across the nation. It is the solemn duty of this department that unites every one of our employees in a common purpose. So indeed, in recent weeks, we have seen arrests here in the United States of individuals suspected of plotting terrorist attacks or supporting terror groups abroad. Home-based terrorism is part of the threat picture we must now confront, and our response must remain one of strength and resolve, but also collaboration. So this year we expanded counterterrorism efforts in critical new ways. We launched a new Joint Fusion Center program office to lead a unified department-wide effort to ensure that threat information is appropriately collected and shared at all levels. We opened the new National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center, NCIC, a 24-hour DHS-led coordinated watch and warning center to address threats and incidents affecting the nation's critical information technology and cyber infrastructure. And we announced our plan to hire up to 1,000 additional cyber professionals to tackle our major cybersecurity challenge. And to foster greater collaboration with our international partners, we signed new agreements with key allies to share information that will bolster our counterterrorism and law enforcement efforts and facilitate scientific research and collaboration to combat transnational events. Securing the borders. A secure nation must have secure borders. This year, we took decisive action to protect these borders while strengthening our partnerships, particularly with Mexico and with Canada. We announced the new Southwest Border Security Initiative, a joint effort of the Department of Homeland Security with the Department of Justice, the Department of State, to crack down on Mexican drug cartels through enhanced border security. As part of that effort, we added unprecedented personnel to the border, increased our intelligence capacity, and improved coordination with state, local, and Mexican law enforcement authorities. For the first time, we also implemented a southbound inspection strategy, including 100% screening of all rail cargo leaving the United States. The results of the strategy have been striking. Seizures of guns, cash, and drugs are up, while the number of illegal crossings is at decade lows, transforming the border environment and paving the way for much-needed immigration reform. And we've strengthened our borders against illegal entry. We've made them more efficient as well for travel and for commerce. This year, we fully implemented the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative at our land and sea ports of entry. We expanded the Global Entry Program, which reduces average wait times by 70% for trusted travelers arriving at our airports. And those are just a few of the things that we have done to facilitate lawful trade and commerce and travel. Enforcing our nation's immigration laws. Coupled with stronger border security, we took unprecedented steps in the interior to enforce immigration laws and improve legal immigration services and benefits that we provide to millions of lawful immigrants every year. At ICE, we implemented a comprehensive strategy to reduce the demand for illegal employment by targeting employers who knowingly hire illegal workers. We expanded our efforts to identify, arrest, and remove criminal aliens who pose a threat to our cities, to our communities. We also took action to reform the immigration detention system, enhancing security and efficiency while prioritizing the health and safety of detainees. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services also launched a redesigned website available in English and in Spanish, which provides a one-stop location for immigration services and information, including real-time alerts on the status of immigration applications via text message and email. I have to mention that that website came in ahead of schedule and under budget. That's a great thing to do. At the same time, USCIS cleared the backlog for background checks of over a year or more on people seeking to work and live in the United States or to become citizens. Now, the vast majority of these checks are answered within 30 days, and average processing times for naturalization applicants have been reduced by nearly 5 months compared to last year. Preparing for and responding to disasters. Now, to be sure, our nation did not face a major hurricane this year, but we did face other disasters, including Midwest floods, California wildfires, and a very serious flu virus that traveled around the world and back, infecting millions of people. We've continued to help lead the response to the H1N1 flu, creating regional coordination teams with our interagency partners to oversee, coordinate, and effectively respond to the virus. And while we're not yet out of the woods, our agencies have continued to work together to keep the American people informed about H1N1 and to help reduce its spread. You all should have received an email yesterday from Dr. Garza discussing the availability of vaccine for our own employees. Building a ready and resilient nation remains our priority, but we also know that we need to effectively rebuild and recover after catastrophe strikes. And nowhere has our commitment to rebuilding remained more firm than in the Gulf Coast, which 4 years after Hurricanes Katrina and Rita still faces many challenges. When I first came to the department, I promised to visit the Gulf and implement reforms that would help cut through red tape and streamline and expedite the decision-making process for public assistance. I'm proud to say that this department kept that promise. This year, FEMA established 2 joint public assistance teams and a new arbitration process to resolve long-standing issues over public assistance funding in the Gulf Coast. Over the past 10 months, these teams have resolved 156 projects, accelerating the pace of funding to the applicants. In all, more than $100 million has supported the repair and replacement of facilities, such as fire and police stations, schools like the Southern University of New Orleans and the Holy Cross School, libraries, and other infrastructure critical to the recovery of communities and communities in the Gulf. We also continue to provide new resources to the people of Louisiana and Mississippi, including more than $2 billion in public assistance grants for debris removal and emergency protective measures, infrastructure projects, mitigation, and education. Gives you some sense about what has been happening. There are many more things to recount, so I am going to be posting a fact sheet about all that the department has achieved this year. And we'll post it on dhs.gov, which we also revamped this year, by the way. So I want to close by coming back to the point I began with, which is that these successes belong to all of us. None of them would have happened without our dedicated employees believing first and foremost in the DHS mission. I know, all of you know, that the range of potential threats or crises our nation faces requires us all to do the best and to be the best at what we do. That means setting aside narrow concerns to focus on big ones. And it means being resilient as a department, looking out for each other and learning from our mistakes, bouncing back from them even stronger than we were before. At the very center of this is you. You are the department. It's not the buildings. It's not the equipment or the computers or the paper or the forms or the acronyms. We've got a lot of acronyms. But the department is you. And without you, the American people would be less safe. Without you, the American people wouldn't have as great a capacity as we do have to respond and react to emergencies of whatever type. Without you, the American people wouldn't have confidence that our borders are secure. They wouldn't have confidence that we're using our intel and analysis and science and technology capabilities to their highest extent. They wouldn't have confidence that our coasts are protected. They wouldn't have confidence that dots are being connected now that weren't connected prior to the creation of this department. So the department is you. And while there are many of you, when we are united as a whole, when we are all working together, when we're all sharing this vision and moving it forward every day, coming to work and leaving work, always saying, what did I do today to improve the safety and security of the American people? That is what makes a great department, and that is exactly what DHS is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Thanks for holding this all-employee town hall. Your leadership is a great source of pride for us all. Welcome, everyone, to the USCIS Talmadge Center. Thanks very much to Tim Ward and his team for making this possible. We're going to be fielding questions from the audience, as well as those that have been sent in by way of email from employees all around the country. If you in the audience do have a question, please raise your hand and we'll try to accommodate you. Please understand we may not be able to accommodate everyone, but the Secretary will try to answer as many questions as possible. I'm going to start, Secretary, with a question from Michael from CBP, who emailed the following question. I strongly believe in the one DHS concept. What are the obstacles we face that are hindering us from fully implementing this initiative?
Well, I think, first of all, everybody's got to believe in it, right? We got to believe in this, and I think we do. And the more I work at DHS and talk with people and travel around, I can see it, and people are getting how, by putting us all in one department, we can leverage our strengths and really provide a greater security architecture across the country. But there are challenges, as the question implies. First of all, just logistics. You have, different procurement processes and HR processes and different forms and all that kind of stuff. You get your appropriations through different committees of the Congress. So that means we've got different streams out there. The fact that we are not yet in one physical location can pose its challenges. The fact that our IT isn't sometimes all linked up, those kinds of things can get in the way. But the things we're doing to surmount those challenges are working. Number one, the new internet I talked about. Number two, regular interaction between headquarters and the components, and particularly the component leadership, so that vision, mission, projects, initiatives constantly being discussed and shared. Number three, the invitation to all employees to help participate in some of our major projects, such as the Quadrennial Homeland Security Review. So, yeah, we've got some logistical issues. I'm not going to pretend that we don't, but these are things that we are working our way through.
Thank you. Let's take a question from the audience now. Ma'am, if you'd be so kind as to identify your first name and the agency for which you work.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Lisa Potts, and I'm currently part of the acquisition professional career program in DHS-wide procurement intern program. And my question revolves around procurement. And currently, numerous components each have their own procurement activities. Do you see this changing during the unification of DHS, and if so, how?
Yeah, I think the question is, right now, we have a lot of different procurement activities by different components. And do I see this unifying? And yes, I do. And I think that it already is. I think part of that will be how we hire and train people who work in procurement so that there's cross-training involved and we're doing things in similar fashion. I think being in one physical location will help. So all of those things will go together. When this department was created, my impression is that a lot of the operational components, parts of the components were funded and put under the DHS roof, but the kind of the management and logistical infrastructure didn't always come along with it, or at least to the extent necessary to run what is the third largest department of the federal government. Procurement, like I said, HR, program management capacity. When we do these big procurements, we have a responsibility to manage those projects and to make sure the dollars are being spent well. Those are the kinds of things we've been asking for and getting slowly but surely in our budgets, in our appropriations, and those are helping us knit that together.
Secretary, a question from Ed with FLETC in Glencoe, Georgia. What will be your goals on diminishing the us versus them mentality that still pervades DHS? Your guidance will lead the way. Best wishes.
Well, I think I don't think it's us versus them. I mean, I think it's all of us, and that's the way I look at it. And like I said in my talk, I oftentimes don't even think of, this is a CBP deal, or this is an ICE deal, or this is a FEMA deal. What I think about is how do we make sure that travelers are safe in an air environment under any kinds of circumstances? How do we make sure that if a community suffers from a disaster, we not only have a response framework for the immediate couple of days afterwards, but a recovery framework for how we restore that community to what it was. So I think about it in terms of, and then I think about, okay, who has assets, capacity, experience, expertise that would help solve that problem? So I don't think about it as us versus them. I think about it as all of us.
We have one over here.
Madam Secretary, I work for the cybersecurity component here at DHS, and I was just wondering, what are your plans to bring together all the different cybersecurity elements to respond to the cyber threat comprehensively?
The question is, what are we doing to bring together all the cybersecurity elements in the department to respond to the threat? I actually think the cyber threat is one of the most acute that we face as a nation and one of the most rapidly evolving. And I think that government has to run faster and better and jump higher to get ahead of this. And part of that, from our departmental standpoint, is recognizing, well, what's our role? How are we going to organize it, and how is it going to be led? Well, our role is defined in the President's policy review on cyber. Our role is the lead for protection of the civilian side of government sites, the .gov sites. Our role is the intersection with critical infrastructure, the private sector, on what they're doing to protect their cyber systems. Water, utilities, the whole list of 18 sectors that we have. So that's our role. DoD gets the .mil role. We all get technology from the NSA. And so we have that role. All right, now, how are we going to go about it? Well, one way is to make sure that everybody understands where the capacities are in the department. You know, what ICE has, what Secret Service has, what we have at NPPD. And one of the major initiatives we've had in the department is to align a lot of what was not component specific, as it were, really in the MPPD arena, right? Get everything lined up there. We brought in Phil Reitner to help lead that effort, and others that he brought with him and on his team to join and complement those already here. We went to OPM and said, we need the ability to direct hire some cyber people. They're different, you know. You know they are. And so we got that direct authority going. And so that's all, you know, that is all going very, very rapidly. But I think, again, if I could go back and say, I think that will be one of our major missions moving forward as a Homeland Security enterprise.
Secretary, a question from Teresa from Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Las Vegas, Nevada. What about pay upgrades for ICE employees in detention and removal operations? Madam Secretary, we saw a lot of questions on this topic, particularly as it relates to CBP employees.
I think, well, first of all, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Is that? Let me not address that directly. I know some of those pay issues. I think I'd rather address them further along in the year as we see how our budget is shaping up.
Thank you. Turning to our audience. Ma'am.
Good afternoon, Madam Secretary. Officer Solar, TSA, DCA. My question is, how will we achieve one DHS?
You know, we're going to achieve it by everybody, like I said before. Everybody's got to invest in it. I mean, everybody's got to know when they come to work, they're coming to work at the Department of Homeland Security. When your kids ask you where you work, you say, you work at the Department of Homeland Security. When your neighbors or the people you go to church with or whatever ask you, what do? You know, you work at the Department of Homeland Security. What's your mission? Well, my mission is the FEMA mission or the Coast Guard, whatever, but it's all out of DHS. And then we look for ways that we can collaborate across the department. We look for opportunities to do that. We look for opportunities, for example, to cross-train people. And one of the things I'm interested in doing is having people work in different components from time to time. So they begin to understand and have an appreciation for what others in the department are doing and can do, and how that could actually help them do their own job better. So that's one way. And then, as I've mentioned before, just really working on the management and logistical side of the shop, really putting those things together in a unified approach. I think that, and I want to just pause here a moment, I actually, you know, am amazed at how much Tom Ridge and Michael Chertoff got done. It is hard to create a department. I mean, that is day in, day out hard work. It can't be done by one person alone. That's why I say this department is you, because you all have created this department. But it was their leadership that really helped pave the way and really make, particularly given the size and complexity of the organization, remarkable progress in a relatively short amount of time. Now, I intend to accelerate that. But a lot's been done. We have a lot to do. Ollie?
Secretary, from James with USCIS in Providence, Rhode Island. Do you foresee any progress on comprehensive immigration reform in the coming year of 2010?
Yes. I think the A lot of work has been done. We have a great team of people who have a lot of experience on immigration from all sides of the issue. We have been providing technical assistance on what should go in a bill and how it would work. And one difference from the last effort in 2007 is that we've actually worked through, operationally, how a bill would work, who would do what, over what time frame, and the like. So the hope is and expectation is, and this is the president's expectation, and a number of us in the cabinet are now playing a role, although we have lead, is that a bill will be proposed in 2010, in early 2010, and it will be designed to improve our enforcement tools, to clarify and improve and update issues about worker flows of all types, and also to streamline the naturalization process, and then to provide a mechanism by which those in the country illegally, prior to a date certain, would come out of the shadows, pay a fine or sanction for violating the law, get their biometrics, a criminal background check, pay their taxes, and over time, if they meet certain benchmarks over many years, would ultimately be able to naturalize. So those are the big chunks, or the big theory of such a bill, but the president has it high on his agenda, and the Congress has it high on theirs.
One from the audience now, if we can.
Good afternoon, Madam Secretary. My name is Yasmin Edwards, and I'm representing the CFO's office. And our question is, along with the one DHS direction, you're aggressively leading the operational components. Is there an increased effort on cross-training and one DHS employee professional development programs for employees to reinforce our future one DHS?
Yeah, yes. And I think that the genesis of that is out of the ER process. I think that we can actually get greater flexibility among our employees, greater career opportunities for our employees, and do it at lesser expense if we do at least initial training and the like through one joint program. So the answer is that, yeah, we are looking at more cross-training for entry level as people come in, but then opportunities also up the career chain.
Secretary, from Charles at Customs and Border Protection in Brunswick, Georgia. Has anyone entertained the idea of creating a retired reserve that could be called up to support emergency or relief efforts?
I think that we haven't really discussed like a DHS reserve per se, but what we have done is really try to drive people into things like Citizen Corps that already exist. Administrator Fugate at FEMA is a big believer in those kind of Citizen Corps type efforts and the ways that they can complement and assist when communities are really in trouble. People really want to do something. I mean, if it's your home and your neighborhood and your community, there's a natural instinct to want to help somehow. What you want to do is drive that into a way where the help is productive and involves some training and expertise and the like. And our employees, many of them have that kind of training and expertise. But I think my thinking, Ollie, has been that rather than reinvent the wheel, use Citizen Corps as the vehicle and drive our own retirees into that.
Thank you.
Question over here.
Over here. Question. Thank you.
Ma'am, Commander Howard Wright with the Coast Guard. DHS components have a wide range of missions and with some very specific stakeholders and customers occasionally, or oftentimes.
Yeah, I've noticed
excuse me.
that.
How do we balance or reconcile the one DH mission or vision, excuse me, with the need to continue to service the needs of those specific stakeholders?
Well, I think they're not mutually exclusive ideas. I think the add-on is to recognize how other components can help you actually service that stakeholder. For example, let me use the American Samoa tsunami. The tsunami hits American Samoa. It's devastating. The governor and the equipment, the governor of American Samoa and the equipment that they need immediately is in Hawaii. So for Coast Guard to immediately have the personnel and the asset means a plane. I'm learning how to speak in the lingo here. Plane that, within hours was on its way to American Samoa. You didn't have to do different orders. I didn't have to call some other cabinet official or any of that. Just made Coast Guard's ability to carry out its rescue mission all the more efficient, made FEMA's ability to meet its recovery responsibilities, all the more efficient. And so I look at these as complementary things. We're not suggesting that we don't service our stakeholders and do the things that we have done, but what we say is we do it in the context of one large department with assets, with departments, with components, with directorates that can actually assist you in carrying out that work.
Secretary, we have time for one last question. It'll be from Peggy from TSA.
Make it good.
Currently, it appears most of the DHS components have their own separate IT solutions to address the same or similar business requirements, which seems costly and redundant. How is this changing under
Yes.
one DHS, and when will it change?
Yeah, IT, and I will tell you, it's very interesting. You talk when I talk with other cabinet members or we go out to whatever, we all have our IT issues. But I think we at DHS are being among the most creative at dealing with some of this. And one of the ways that we are doing that is the intranet, which will be up and running in 2010. And that's going to be basically a department-wide kind of, that's what it says, intranet. So that's one of the one thing. And the other, another thing that we're doing is really looking at IT procurement. Where's the procurement officer back there? And really driving it to be a procurement that makes sense for a one DHS. And again, as we get ready for and move into a major headquarters at St. E's, part and parcel of what we're doing is actually building some of that in from the get-go. And that in and of itself will make our work so much easier. I know that was the last question. First of all, I want to thank all of you out around the country. I'm waving at you. If you can't see that, you can wave back if you want. Go ahead, let me see you wave. Excellent. Very good. All right, FEMA Region 5 wins. Look, I know this was kind of a serious speech, but I'm very serious about what I talked about. This department is and should be a great place to work. It has a great mission. It has great people. It has a wonderful set of agencies and directorates, and it's got great leaders like Ale Mayorkas to help us carry out our mission. When we all, like I said, really invest in that one DHS, right? We strengthen everybody in this room. We strengthen our own ability to do this important work. And my own goal for the next year is to really do everything I can to build that capacity, to drive us into one DHS, to back up that work that we're doing, to back up the work that you're doing. I hope that you will do the same, because I think the American people are just now beginning to realize what kind of an asset has arisen out of the tragedy of 9/11. So with that, let me thank you. Thanks CIS for hosting this. Thanks all of you for being out there. We will post a much longer set of things we've done over the past year on the website. And let me wish for all of you a happy and healthy holiday season and a happy and healthy new year. Don't forget to get your flu shot. Okay, thanks.